So I bought my Ricoh GR III about 8 or 9 months ago, and I have absolutely loved that camera. I have posted a couple other videos on it, so if you're interested in Ricoh GR III content, definitely check out those. But after a few months, there was just one thing that I really needed to fix about this camera, and that was the lack of the in-camera flash. You know, I've always wanted to keep my Ricoh GR III incredibly minimal. I don't have a case on it. The only accessories that I'm using is this GR lens cap as well as a screen protector. So not really too fancy of accessories or too cool, but I knew I definitely wanted a flash, and I think that Godoc's IM20 is the perfect flash for the Ricoh GR III. With this flash, I haven't hesitated to bring it out with me. I've been doing a really good job of taking the Ricoh GR III when I'm going out, if I'm doing anything interesting, and I think having this flash just really opens the doors for some new photography techniques that I haven't really tried out before. So with this flash, I've been able to take a lot more portraits inside, portraits of my dog. I have a foster wiener dog right now, and I was taking some photos of her, and it was just really cool to be able to use the flash with this camera. I've also been experimenting with some product photography. I 3D printed a light fixture that I'm working on, and I just wanted to take some cool photos of it, and I thought using the GR3 with the Godoc's IM20 was kind of the perfect camera for me. Now I will say these are all like enthusiast level photos, but I've had a lot of fun experimenting with this flash and kind of trying out a couple new things. I've been able to try out some slow shutter speed photography and kind of adding some motion blur, which has just been really cool, especially because I didn't really mess with any of that before. I've pretty much always been a video only guy, and just using the Sony a7 III or even my Sony a6300 before that. The straight out of camera JPEGs or even RAW files just weren't that inspiring, and I just wasn't interested in the photography. So when I got the Ricoh GR III, I think it really reignited the passion I had for photography, and I think this camera is my favorite camera I own. As far as cost, I do believe this flash is right around $30, so it's not too expensive, especially if you look at some of the more expensive options. I know the Lightpix Lab Pro, I might have butchered that, but I actually purchased that flash about a week before Godoc's sent me this IM20, and I haven't even used it once, so I still have it in the wrapping, and I'm gonna grab it. Yeah, so I got the Lightpix Labs Q22, which is another really popular flash for the Ricoh GR III, but given the size of this flash, I just haven't had an excuse to use it, unfortunately. If we compare the IM20 to the Lightpix Labs, they're not really even comparable in size, so I don't really consider these two competition for each other. I think they're just different uses, but I did know the Lightpix Lab has been a pretty popular flash for the Ricoh GR III. Really the only issue I've had with using a flash on the GR3, and it's not really specific to the IM20 because you're able to control the power output directly on the flash, which is just incredibly nice, is actually trying to figure out what my flash compensation should be for the exposure in the GR3. That is something I've had a challenge with. I've pretty much overexposed the majority of my photos, but I think a lot of the nostalgia around flash photos is kind of those blown out highlights and just midtones and everything, just being lit up. So I don't have an issue with it. Usually what I'll do if I'm using the IM20 is I'll just switch to completely manual exposure, and I'm able to take some nice test shots before I really get into it, just using the manual settings. I think we can sometimes get caught up in all the accessories and everything that's thrown at you on a daily basis telling you that you need it, but I think this is one of the products that if you do purchase it, you're not going to regret it. The GR3 is an amazing camera, but not having an in-camera flash just kind of limits your opportunities. I've had to use my iPhone sometimes because it's just too dark, especially if I'm in an indoor environment, maybe at night. And I've just had to use the iPhone because the lack of flash has just made it impossible to use the GR3. I still haven't edited any of my Ricoh GR3 photos. I haven't even ran them through Lightroom to increase brightness on the mobile app, like every photo I've taken with this camera. and either posted or shared here on these videos has been completely 100% straight out of camera. And you know, having this flash just has been a way for me to really justify using the camera more and taking it with me. I think if you're gonna look at something like the Lightpix Labs flash, you're using this flash for a dedicated fashion shoot or event coverage where you need, you know, a really strong flash. But if you just need something to take around with you to kind of light up things in areas when it's too dark and, you know, find yourself needing a flash, I think the IM20 is the perfect flash for you. So if you've been contemplating getting a flash for your Ricoh GR3, definitely use this as a sign and take my recommendation and get the IM20. I think it's really the only flash that you can get that's not going to, you know, really hinder you too much and take up too much space. And I think the flash output is just about perfect. You know, it does charge over USB-C like I mentioned, and I've never had an instance where the flash will die before the camera. You know, I haven't shot any events or anything large where, you know, I would need to take over 200 photos at a time, but I do know that it's advertised as around 200 photos at full output. So if you want to talk about the Ricoh GR3 or you have anything else you want to chat about, definitely talk to me down in the comments. You know, I really appreciate you watching this video and have a blessed rest of your day. Thank you.